Today it seems that civility and respect have been thrown out the window. If the woke mob disagrees with your viewpoint, they will carry out a character assassination in an attempt to silence you. And the people being targeted the most are Christians and conservatives.
Clearly, there is an anti-Christian bias. And this isn't, some people want to look back and say, oh, it's only been going on for a couple decades. That's wrong. It's actually been going on, 4 decades since the turn of the century. Now we're at a point where, Christian thought is canceled. I call it the spirit of invalidation that has been running rampant for decades.
What cancel culture, I think, when you really understand what it truly means, is people being canceled from everyday life, from being detached from civil society. I think that's what's scary about the kind of cancel culture phenomenon, is how deep it reaches. A person can, because of their political views, because they cross what is considered politically correct, they are unpersoned by society and the major institutions of our society that increasingly conform to only one worldview. I think that's what makes it particularly disturbing.
We've been conditioned over time to kind of accept this as status quo. And the result of it is the America that we have today.
But who exactly is participating in this cancel culture? Some have referred to them as reputational terrorists.
I think calling cancel culture reputational terrorism is a good way to put it. I think that's the point of cancel culture, is to make people afraid to say their opinions, afraid to say the truth.
One group at the forefront of this reputational terrorism is the Southern Poverty Law Center, the self-proclaimed hate group watchdog.
The Southern Poverty Law Center is an organization that began back during the Civil Rights era, in part to protect the rights of those who were being unjustly treated. However, what we have today is an organization that, in continuing its mission, has lost sight of some of the key principles that motivated, in particular, the Southern Christian leaders, the ministers, who were fighting for our unalienable rights.
We believe that while they may have stood for some good things in the past, what they're doing with their hate map towards ministries like D. James Kennedy Ministries is absolutely wrong, and they should be held responsible.
The Southern Poverty Law Center has placed our ministry on their hate map for simply holding to the biblical definition of marriage and sexuality, placing our ministry amongst actual hate groups such as the KKK and neo-Nazis.
I think the Southern Poverty Law Center has almost been a vanguard of cancel culture, because they have lumped in social conservatives, people who are mainstream, with essentially hate groups. And I think the whole point is it really is to mix those two things together. In effect, creating that cancel culture for anybody who disagrees with a far left line is essentially labeled a hater, a racist, all these terrible things.
Matt Staver's Liberty Council has also falsely been placed on the SPLC's hate map.
It is irresponsible for the Southern Poverty Law Center to label organizations and people as haters or hate groups simply because they disagree. We can have disagreement all day long. Do it respectfully, do it politely. We're not going to necessarily see on the same page. That's fine. But don't put people in harm's way intentionally. They know what they're doing.
The Southern Poverty Law Center, I think, often quite dishonestly, has used their platform, has used their media connections to destroy the reputation of people.
The media will cite whatever the Southern Poverty Law Center says as gospel truth. Once you can say that somebody's on the SPLC's hate list, and if you're a journalist for the mainstream media, then you point out, yes, this group is on the hate list for the SPLC, and this is automatically bad. This shows you what haters the group is. So that's essentially what's happening.
There's a lot of money in positioning yourself as an organization that's going to deal with haters who are in your neighborhood and haters who are around every corner, and skinheads, and the rise of the KKK raised literally tens of millions of dollars based on that particular position.
This is an organization that has a massive endowment of, I think, $300 million. Much of it is kept offshore in offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands and so forth. And yet they exploit people, small donors and so forth, asking for money that they don't need in order to do things that are disingenuous, that are not actually helping homosexuals, but simply attacking people who they happen to disagree with ideologically.
Southern Poverty Law Center has the right to speak. They don't have the right to libel, slander, or defame. And there is a difference between speaking openly and honestly in the marketplace of ideas and destroying wrongfully the reputation of an innocent party.
In 2017, D. James Kennedy Ministries filed a lawsuit in federal court against the Southern Poverty Law Center for defamation.
The judge took the time to write an almost 150-page ruling over the course of a year in evaluating these issues. But we believe, as we are taking this up on appeal to the 11th Circuit, that there were a number of areas where he got the issue wrong. I think when you say hate group, it's pretty obvious. You're talking about someone motivated by hate. Well, that's not D. James Kennedy Ministries at all.
The Southern Poverty Law Center is redefining what hate is. It's doing so first to raise money, and secondly, it's doing it in order to shut down all contrary opinion, which the First Amendment was designed to protect.
So in a sense, these are reputational terrorists that are aiming to destroy those that are speaking truth into a culture.
We've appealed that decision to the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals in Atlanta.
D. James Kennedy Ministries is literally standing up for the freedom of every Bible-believing church and organization across the nation.
Now, more than ever, it is vital for Christians to stand firm in their beliefs, despite the attacks of these vicious, reputational terrorists.
I think Christianity is one of the primary targets of cancel culture. I think that the radicals who push this idea, they see the West in general as a great evil in this world. And that includes, of course, Christianity, which is really the moral foundation of the modern West. And they see their ideas as running counter to that. A Christian West, a Christian America is one that I think resists their ideas. And I think that's why they want to make turn Americans against Christianity. I think poison religion because it counters many of their ideas. It's not just that you're going to be thrown in prison for what you believe. Things have not gone that far, but you will lose your reputation. You will lose your ability to make a living, to speak your mind, these things that are foundational to freedom, to the American way of life. These are the things that are going to be taken away from people.
We are being maligned, and a lot of us aren't comfortable with that. We don't know how to handle that. And so we begin to compromise so that people will like us, so that they won't say nasty things about us. And that compromise keeps us from doing those very things that we've been called and commanded to do so that we can preserve and proclaim the gospel. And yet to do it with gentleness and with reverence. That's always been what we've been called to do. It continues to be what we're called to do, to give a reason for the hope that is in us.